Whoa, what's up? Got me in a drink there. What's up, Flooring fam? Welcome to the Huddle. We're here every Tuesday. We gather here every Tuesday to discuss maintaining forward progress in our flooring careers. With me, as always, Mr. Daniel and Jose Gonzalez from Preferred Flooring up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Your
So,
go-to flooring pros there in the north central part of the United States. We got Daniel in the office and Jose in a truck, which should not surprise
anyone?
anybody.
Sorry, guys. I pretty much live in here, have extra clothes. I really do have extra clothes and everything in here.
Well, today we're going to be discussing how to price competitively while maintaining your profitability. Excuse me. This is, kind of standard concepts that can apply to both installers and flooring companies. But the best method to ensure your profitability is cost plus. Make sure that you gather all your costs and then you add a markup to that covers your overhead and profit. That's pretty standard for flooring companies. From an installer standpoint, I think the first step, you guys can tell me your thoughts here, but first step is know what your costs are. Like so many installers, I think we talked about this in a previous episode as well. Like so many guys don't know what their true costs are. Would you guys agree? Is that
Yeah, run into it all the time where
Yes.
you talk to the guys and they're like, "I made enough money for today," and then you start talking
Oh,
about the numbers, and it's like you really didn't make anything today.
yeah?
Yeah,
So
and you do know
what are some things that the
well,
installer should consider when they're like trying to figure out what their per, because what I did was try to figure out what my per day cost was. And there's always a variable in there from how far I have to drive to the job site or whatever. But standard variable, this is how much it costs me to go to a job, regardless of what I'm doing there, to go to a job for an 8 hour day. That's how I looked at it when I was subbing. What do you guys think?
yeah, that's how.
that's a pretty good way to look at it. Yeah.
But I think there's so much loss in translation there, especially when they don't know how to keep track of things, and all they do is throw all the receipts in a box and then wait till someone asks for it. It's a lot of stuff goes into it because you got your fuel, your vehicle costs, and then I don't think a
Your
lot of people
consumables.
take into consideration that especially the smaller outfits when it's just one or two people, it's 100% of your time. They're like, and we fell into it too when we were first starting out. It's charging for the time spent on the project only, like the project's 45 minutes away, and that's when we start, when in reality we should have started our clock as soon as we start the day, because that counts towards our time towards that project.
Yes.
Yeah, when you're
You actually go to your
figuring
daily
your
operating.
and that's when you guys were subbing, you just kind of in your head calculating the cost for the day, started it when you were on the job site. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, when we first started, and then you start realizing that there's all these little bits of time that don't get accounted for, and you have to make sure that everyone, profit is something that you need in a business. You're not there to hang out and break even every day. You're there to
And you're not
get the
there for
profit,
practice.
and so that way you can grow, right? So you need to realize all this time adds up. So 15 minutes in the morning, and then you got to go spend a half hour, 45 minutes going to the store or something. Everything adds up, and you got to start charging accordingly, like that. You can't just, not everything is just included in the installation price itself, because a lot of guys charge by the square foot or square yard, stuff like that.
Which is fine, but when you're looking at an opportunity, and let's just say LVT. If you're going to do 1,000 feet of LVT at $1 a foot, and it's you and one guy, you want to look at the project, at least at the drawings or something, and kind of understand the layout and how difficult the install may be. So those things impact your production. And then you have your regular costs. What's your help going to cost for a day with burden, and burden being insurance and taxes and stuff. And then what's it cost just per mile for you to start your vehicle? Or what I'd always do is just look at it like anywhere in Wichita I can go be at the job and work for 8 hours, and I need to make a minimum of $400 or whatever it was. Then I had a helper, I need to make 600 for that day or whatever. So some of the costs that you need to be considering as an installer, and I know this seems elementary, but if you're watching this thinking it's elementary, you'd be surprised at how many people do not even think it through this far. They just start doing work and hope at the end of the day that they're making money until they figure out they're not. And so
it's one of those things where what are you using throughout the day as well, right? Like the consumables was the one thing that was overlooked on our part for a long time, where we would go and buy supplies that would last us a week, 2 weeks, a month. And, we'd spend a couple $1,000s on supplies, very minimal supplies, like not even equipment, just supplies to like accessories for our equipment, a few $1,000s.
So you're talking like, just to be super clear, you're talking like blades for your carpet knives, blades for your utility knives, blades for your scrapers.
Yep.
That kind of consumable item.
Yeah.
Yeah,
notches
your consumables.
Are the big thing right now.
Yeah, notches. What made us start realizing the amount of money that we weren't accounting for is once we started getting more into grinding everything during or before we prep. The segments for grinders and the heads and the wheels and accessories, all that stuff is pretty expensive.
Diamonds are expensive, guys.
Yeah.
Just ask your wife or your girlfriend.
Well, they don't know. You buy them for them anyways.
Oh, they picked it out. They knew what they wanted. Okay, yeah, so that's the stuff that I would what I would just as an idea, and what I did, my hard costs, what it just took for Paul Stuart to jump in his van and drive to a job pretty much anywhere in Wichita and spend 8 hours there. I had that figure that I knew. Now, you got to forgive me, it's been 25 years ago, but 22, 23 years ago, maybe something like that. But the daily figure. Then you had your production costs, or your costs that are associated with the production of the work. And if it's trials and those types of deals, I'd figure, an additional cost. And I'd figure $10 a trial back then. I honestly don't even know what a good trial costs at this moment, but I'd figure $10 a trial or a blade and, any other specific things I needed. And if you have a big piece of equipment, whether it's a demo machine or a heat welder or those things, you got to be thinking about the maintenance on that even. And so if you take on a job and the money's good enough on a per square foot basis to cover everything, that's fine. I'm not telling you have to change the way you price your services. I'm saying consider the cost and look at, if you do 1,000 feet, and in the example I was given at $1 a foot, you're seeing the $1,000. Like, you should automatically just deduct the 300, the 200 for this, the 100 for that, the $50 for this sundry and scraper blades. And then boom, now you're at a more realistic like profit margin, so to speak. Right?
Right.
And ideally you want to pay yourself, pay your installer, your helper or your partner or whoever's working with you, pay your hard costs, and still have some money left over. That's called profit. You don't take, so many guys just look at like, how much am I paying my guy and then the rest is my profit. That's not
Yeah.
profit.
No.
Right?
Not even
Someone's
close.
got to be paid to install it, whether it's you paying yourself to go install it or you pay another installer to go install it. You have costs. So almost look at it like, what would it cost me as an installer to have Daniel Gonzalez go do my job? And if that's going to cost me, XYZ, then, and Daniel gets paid, and you just figure in your head, okay, if I pay Daniel $40 an hour to go do this job, how much is it going to cost me if I can get it done in 8 hours? And these are all real, hypotheticals. But the point here is, regardless of whether you yourself are installing or someone else, if you take on a project, you want to understand that true profit is after you've paid yourself something, you're paid your help, paid your bills, your taxes, insurance, that kind of thing. You should know that rate on a daily basis. So if you pay $1,000 a year, do the math on how much that costs you a day, right? It's about $3 a day or so that it costs you to be insured. And so kind of have those figures in your head, and anything after those things are paid, that's profit. And if you're labor only, you may not have a ton of profit, but you still should aim for some level of profit.
Always aiming for profit.
100%. And you'll what's the name of that book that Kyle had
Profit First.
Was it Profit First? Yes. I mean, that's a good listen, a good read.
What's the premise there? Other than what the title is very clear about.
Yeah, so it's setting up different bank accounts for, like operating costs, and like 4 or 5 different bank accounts, but it's factoring in how much profit you're making at the beginning of the project and taking that out right off the top, putting it in its own account. That way you're only left to pay yourself with what you were supposed to be paying out anyways.
So essentially budgeting, project budgeting.
Yep.
Just using bank accounts to make it
right. I think
easier.
I think it was written when bank accounts were free and you can have like 10 bank accounts and not have to pay a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Probably, but in the title itself, it helps you track and understand where you're going wrong. Look at things a little bit closer.
All right, Jose, we're gonna have to keep going because you got a smiley face and a crackly voice, and it's frozen that way. So, as this week's topic, when we're talking about the elephant in the room, is you still have to be competitive. You still have to win the work. Now, I would personally love it if we would change the entire way we bid work in America and just make it the closest to the average. I think I brought this up before, but I talked to a GC that was from Europe. It's been several years ago, and the way that he described it over there was they get all the bids in, they assemble them, come up with the average, and then whichever contractors closest to the average wins the job, not the low guy. Whoever's closest to the average by a percentage basis. And he said that you could be closest on the high side and still win the job from the guy
closest on
the second closest that's on the low side. Wouldn't that be freaking awesome? Then you're bidding jobs to do them right. And then the installers it would change the whole dynamic. We can't get our capitalist
mindset,
the way we look at money here in America, like cheap, to go that direction, I don't think, but it would be great. That being said, here we have to win the job by being either superior service where they want to work with you regardless of you being higher, and that's the best place to be, or you're the low number. I would encourage everybody, and this is what the point I'm driving at. Provide the level of installation quality and service to the companies you work with to the highest degree possible. Because if they don't have to expend management money to be on the job site watching over you or constantly chasing you down on a Friday afternoon or whatever, if you're just a really good installer and you're an independent, you're going to be able to, if your quality's there, you're going to be able to charge more. I know for a fact we have guys that, in a way have you over a barrel as a company because they're so damn good that, they make a little bit more money than anybody else because you don't have to worry about them. So get to that point where you're not being used by a flooring company because they have to fill a body on a job site, but you're being used because you were chosen. If you can get to that point, you're going to make more money.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we built up as well, was that level of service. They knew that as soon as pretty much they handed us the paperwork, it was a hands-off approach, and any issues that came up, not only would we let them know, but we had a solution and provided that solution right away. It's like, hey, this is what's going on, this is what needs to be done, and that way they have all the information already when they
How'd you do
present it to the
that?
customer.
So how'd you come up with solutions?
Constantly uh, learning about our craft. It's a lot of it has had to deal with, because we've seen, like, when we were doing a bunch of dorm rooms and stuff on Gypcrete, and then you see a bunch of guys going in there and they don't know that you have to prime the Gypcrete before you start patching with a cement-based patch. So it's like simple stuff like
Yeah.
that, and or just the whole moisture thing. Moisture is everywhere, and moisture issues everywhere, right? So it's knowing the signs for the moisture before you proceed with anything, so that way you're like, look, this is moisture, we can test and whatever, but I guarantee this is what's happening. This is how we can fix it. That way they have the problem and the solution before they don't even have to come set foot back on the job site.
'Cause everybody likes solutions when they hear about a problem, right? We've read a lot of personal development books between the three of us, and a lot of them will either tell you that outright or there's a feel of that, right? Like, don't just come say, "Oh, this floor's messed up." That's it. Like, why and what solution do you in the field think is the best? And that's how you're able to grow into a company like what you guys have done, is because you become a solutions provider, and it only comes from, I mean, watch every episode of the Huddle and I'll almost guarantee you won't find very many that we're not telling you to get educated and be trained and learn the products and know what you're installing. Like, it's not the company's job to make sure you understand all that. Actually, it is the company's job, but it's just as much your job as it is the company's job to make sure that you understand how it's supposed to be installed. And then if you step in the first position, meaning you become a flooring company like you guys, well, now it is you're in first spot.
Right.
It's darn sure not the owner's job to know this. It's your job. So being educated, again, it goes back to embrace education, embrace training, embrace the workshops and the product demos and things like that that are available to everybody. Go to that stuff. It does seem like a lot of the different training entity events, if you look at them on social, there's more and more people. That's very encouraging. I love seeing that. I hope that everybody learns to become a professional themselves, so that when you do have a problem on a job site, you're able to provide that solution. That puts you in a position where companies want to use you instead of somebody else, even if you're more expensive.
Right. And I
I
watched
mean, you
it.
guys
Yeah, and
experienced that, didn't you?
We did. We did. Can you guys hear me better now that I turned off my video?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did experience that, and we constantly experience it. It and I wanted to add, I just didn't know if you guys could hear me, but I wanted to add to what Daniel was saying too. And it was coming behind other installers or other installers or failed installations that helped us come up with solutions. That it wasn't, we didn't always have certifications and a bunch of formal training. It was just a lot of scenarios that we've hit. But gaining that knowledge and the additional training and education classes help us have foresight, and that is what is what I feel it brings value to the table. Even from the labor only standpoint, is the foresight to be preventative, ask the right questions when you're sitting down and at the table with everyone, trying to figure out how to move forward, how to price it.
So the key is like the first, as it applies to this topic, the first suggestion I have is make yourself more valuable.
Yeah.
Find the ways to make yourself more valuable so that you don't have to be low all the time.
Right. And I watched the video. It was not about, the flooring industry. It was about, I think it was more geared towards IT. They were talking to like some kids that wanted to be in IT in high school, and then, or something like that. And then the difference in the amount of money you can make if you go to college versus if you don't, and how companies look at just your degrees and you're automatically worth that much more. And it's kind of like that in the flooring industry too. I mean, not as far as titles and stuff, but your education in general, because the more educated you are, the more solutions you have to the problems that are popping up as they come up, instead of having to do trial and error and just ignoring it, thinking that it's never going to come back to bite you.
Yeah, and for the trades or the jobs out there that require college, like an IT thing, or things that you can learn in college and shortcut your experience. I know there's a big assault on education in America. I don't agree with it. I don't think that you shouldn't send your kids to college. I think if they're going to go into a field where going to college helps them shortcut their years of experience and they can go in making more money, then that's a valuable thing. I think what we need to do is don't send your kids to be a psychology major and then they get into some other trade or something, or they take a liberal arts degree that provides no value to them later. But outside that, education is essential in most of this. Like Jose, you just said that a lot of this you learned from experience, but had you taken education first, some of those pitfalls could have been avoided. I know it's certainly true for me, because I started same way that I'm preaching against, which is, just going and trying to do stuff that I had no business doing. But it caused a lot of pain to my clients and myself because I didn't have any right doing it. I wasn't trained properly. Did I learn over time? Yeah. And then I did go get my certifications and my trainings. But the point here is, like, if you can make yourself more valuable to the marketplace, like Daniel was just talking about in IT, it's the same thing. It's just a different way of getting that education. And then you can prove that you are that solutions provider. So making yourself more valuable is kind of step one to winning jobs in a competitive market. I also know that part of being more valuable is being able to be depended upon. And so, being a man or a woman of your word, if you say you're going to be there on that day, be in there on that day, or high level of communication. All these things can help you be better than other. And look, I'm not saying anything bad about installers, but the bar is not that high. Like if you communicate well, You show up when you say you're going to show up. And if you can't, you give the company or whoever you're working with plenty of notice that you're not going to be able to start on that day, but maybe you start the next morning. Getting that call, 3 days ahead of time is much better than getting that call the morning of. And
Yeah, 100%.
it's those kinds of things that make you more valuable. So know your cost, make yourself more valuable, and then, at the end of the day, if we are in a real competitive head-to-head bidding scenario, do you guys have some what's your guys' advice in that case? So you're head-to-head with another company or another installer that is, let's say, equal or apparently equal. How do you look at the projects?
I'm gonna let Daniel go ahead and take that one, because I think everybody's gonna have a slightly different view on that. But Daniel's been doing a lot of bidding against some of the local companies, and he's doing pretty good.
So what I do is you just talk to them, right? And it's not really. So in the last pre-bid I did, I went in there, and for the first 15 minutes we were just strictly talking about baseball, building that rapport with them. And then once it gets down to it, they start asking questions. You're competitive. What are some of the issues that we could run into? And I just get really, really in depth on the technical side of things, as far as things that they may not know. This is what I'm seeing on job sites. These are the solutions. This is why this number is, could be this, and you may not see other people doing that. And a lot of it is communication before we even get to that point, to where it's like, they want moisture mitigation included in the number, but I'm going to put it on a separate line item so that way they can see that this is going to be the cost for the moisture remediation broken out, so that way if we don't need it, there's no question that is gone. So
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
It also ensures that if your mitigation price, we literally won a job over this, but if your mitigation price is $50,000 and your competitor's low by 60 or 55 or 45 or something, that it might just bring up, hey, maybe I should, whoever you're bidding the job to, maybe I ought to call this other company and make sure they have this mitigation price too, right? So it can save you there.
So that's what I've been doing.
And I deal with a lot of the same things. Try to make everything more personalized. Like I get a lot of negotiated stuff across my plate, which is pretty awesome, right? And some of the clients that I work with are pretty easygoing, pretty easy to talk to, easy to deal with. They kind of already know what they want, what they need, and it's just a matter of explaining the pitfalls versus the wins on what they want. And like Daniel said, just giving them information, finding common ground outside of the scope of work, outside of their project, is actually really huge. So if you're able to talk to someone on a personal level, that's super huge, and it comes super natural to me, because I don't ever really think about kind of go and try to find out what school they went to and what team they like. It just you just pick up on things, and during conversation you ask questions, they give you answers, and then it's about them, and it's not really about you. And then boom, now you have solutions for them.
So you
build you build a
saying,
relationship.
People do business with people that they like. So sometimes how you get them to like you is you relate to them on a personal level.
Well, at the very least, you got to have a conversation to see if they're going to like you or not. So, building relationships, and I would venture on to say go back and watch our estimating podcast, our huddle there. It was probably 10 episodes or so ago, but we mentioned this then. Building relationships is both with the client, but when you start getting in the world of supplying materials, and I don't care if you're just supplying grout sponges or something, like having a good relationship with your vendor where you can buy at a better rate will help you a ton. If your rep likes working with you or the store, the distributor likes you, they're more apt to give you a better price. And all you got to do is ask for it half the time if you've built a good relationship with them. If you're not the guy that's always bitching at them, always bringing them product back to restock and pay for and
Yeah.
all that kind of
Right.
stuff. If you're a good customer to them and you've built a relationship, then that's a way for you to lower your costs below what your competitors' costs may be and win that work. I would also say make sure you have from an installer standpoint, make sure you have an installation vehicle. I know a guy that ran across a little bit of money, went and bought a Mercedes. Doesn't even has an old beat up truck and went and bought a
Oh
Mercedes.
no.
I love the guy, but I was like, man, you could have got such a nice van.
But
I
you know,
drove. I
but
drove my.
he's driving a really nice car though.
He is no doubt about it. Um, but yeah,
I,
so
I,
building those
I remember that.
relationships is what I got out of that, right? Building relationships both with your vendor,
Right.
but
Because I
very
have
importantly with your client.
a project. I was quoting a local church, and he's seen us doing the school next door. We did a couple classrooms for him. Then he approached one of the guys. We got his information, and at first we're the only ones in there, and then they have the meetings, and they're like, well, we need at least one more number, so they bring someone else in, and then that's where the relationship with your rep comes in, because as soon as that happened, they went. We don't have the same rep as the other company, but they still see it in the system. So our rep called me right away, and he's like, hey, this is what's going on. There's another company involved. You're the one that spec this material. This is your new pricing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and
even
getting protection is great. That is phenomenal.
yeah, and that's like specifying work, specifying product. I think it comes invaluable to build relationships because like your day in, day out stuff that you buy from your local distributor, if they like dealing with you, you can ask for a better price and you'll likely get it. You know, even if it's $1 off a roll or 50 cents off a roll of seam tape and you're a residential carpet installer, that adds up over the year.
Right.
And if you're constantly buying things and you're loyal to a given distributor and you built that relationship and you go to them, they're going to be very encouraged to keep your business and they like you. So, um, yeah, the competitive bid world, you'd think like, okay, just cut your margin. And I wanted to have discussion outside of just cutting your margin, cutting your profit margin. The only time I would suggest doing that is if it's one of those jobs that are either kind of a resume job, like I did this project and it comes with a lot of clout for doing it, or the project is so easy that the it makes sense that you can make the same amount of money in the time frame because it's such a simple project. So meaning if the job if it, using the earlier example of 1,000 square foot, if it's all cut up and it takes you 3 days versus it's not cut up and it takes you one day,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Then
that's
those
something to
jobs you
factor in
might be
as
able to
well.
lower margin a little bit because you're still going to make a close amount of money, but only in one day, and you eliminate a lot of cost of management and such, as well as if you're an installer, you can do another project, right? You got 2 more days now, so.
So John Steyer says that making your company seem a little selective and picky on projects gives you a leg up. So he's saying that like
Yes.
potential clients, let them know that they had to schedule with you, because he's looking at like doctors and other professionals. sometimes, you know, it takes months in order to get in there to get an appointment. So it's make them want you more.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
and that does add on to like the creating a relationship, right? Because the same way that a client don't want to work with you because maybe they just don't like you, maybe don't like your appearance, your attitude, the way you are, your approach. Maybe they don't like you, but you have the choice to not like a client as well. And sometimes it's better that way. If you don't like the client and the if you don't like the client and something goes wrong on that project, chances are you guys are not going to see eye to eye, and there's going to be some kind of dispute, right? Unless it goes perfect. So if you're getting bad vibes, just hey, you know what? I'm sorry, I don't think this project is for me, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Um, and maybe they'll ask you why. We've
That's a
had a
good
couple
point.
clients. We've had a couple clients that didn't like us at first, or we didn't like them, and we just found out we didn't like each other because we were pretty much the same person, just uh, different sides of the coin. And well, something's on fire. Uh, different sides of the coin,
Well,
but we pushed through, and we ended up being repeats on both sides. Clients and they were hiring us, and they it would end up being good relationships, still good relationships.
yeah, I think it speaks to building relationships, but all, I took it as like being exclusive, which to me kind of also goes into the final point, which is building some type of a brand for yourself. So many installers look, I I'm not huge on social media either, but building some type of a reputation or a brand about yourself, even if it's outside of social media. I mean, I do a ton of consulting with architects, even general contractors, about what the right flooring to put in a particular
Yeah.
facility under a particular use case is, because I've gotten the reputation of being a researcher and having a ton of experience on flooring that performs well in different aspects. Um, I've told the story, and this is probably the project. This is really the project that led me to understand the importance of this. Is we did a natural stone, a limestone, in a Class A office building with a ton of people in it, in the main lobby, and the tiles started to crack in different spots, and it's like the softest stone you could put down in the main lobby of a really busy building. And it didn't crack all over, but it just, cracks would come here and there, and it had some natural veining and different things going along with it. The point being is, really, we should have put porcelain tile that looked like that in the lobby, and then they would have never had a problem. And so just making sure you're putting the right product in the right spot. But that came from a reputation that I had built through the years of experience. And as an installer, you can get the reputation of being like we have guys that are just known for being very particular about how things get done, and they just won't vary from it. And they typically have the best quality. And so there's always a trade-off. They can kind of be more demanding, that type of installer, but I would rather that than a guy that's easier to work with and doesn't have the level of quality and execution.
We've been called crybabies a few times, but
uh,
it's okay.
I'm with you.
yeah, it's okay, but some people say crybabies. I like what you said is particular, right? And it's just we've been down the road of failure, doing it the way others have priced it out or wanted us to do it because they just have a lack of knowledge on certain things, and we didn't, and we exercised that muscle quite a bit. And I know that they don't like to hear it from anybody, right? Like sometimes we have to swallow that hard pill, but
I've
it's
heard it
just a
a hundred
matter.
times. Like, you guys And I'm like, you guys, are you talking about flooring guys? You guys
Yeah.
always, oh, I'm sorry. We need windows and an HVAC system running,
Right,
and we're
exactly.
Yeah.
crying.
What do you mean you need this
And it's
slab to be a
just,
certain temperature?
Who thought?
it's, our best, we've always had the client's best interest on the forefront of anything that we were doing. And not only that is right after the client's best interest is our workmanship. How long is this going to last? Is this going to be a good investment for them? How can I make this a better investment for them? And and maybe that's just the way we grew up, growing up trying to make toys from the dollar store last, because you knew you couldn't go back and do it again, makes you
Well,
take
it's just
a very
caring.
different
I
angle.
mean, it's just caring about your client, which goes all into this whole conversation, which is how do you win bids competitively and still stay profitable? Well, I'll tell you, you're going to take some jobs that are maybe less margin as an installer or as a company, but at the end of the day, that cannot be your go-to way of getting work. It cannot always be, we have to be the low bid. If you have to be low bid all the time, you are just the market, like your competitors are setting your pricing. That's how I look at it. Like,
Yes.
I'm not doing a very good job of building my reputation as a company or building our brand out or making sure our quality is good if I always have to be low. If that's the market, if that's where you're at, then you need to start looking at some of these soft skills on how to improve your ability to ask for more money and building relationships so you can ask your vendors to give less money and open up that gap between cost and revenue, and in between there's your profit.
So
So
I think it was last week, I was at an event at a local construction company that the chamber put on, and I met a guy from a construction company we've never worked before, and he actually called me earlier today, and that's kind of one of the conversations we had, and he's like, you know, what are our strengths, stuff like that. And he was like, what about multifamily? I said, man, multifamily has, historically been a race to the bottom. And he was like, okay, well, where do you think that, your pricing would be? And I said, I can't really say where my pricing would be because on something like that, trying to win a bid, because my price is my price regardless of where I'm going to be installing it. So that pretty much puts me out of contention right away. So I'm not going to lower my price to try and win a project knowing that it's going to take just as much work as all these other ones. And then he kind of shifted the conversation and we started talking about healthcare and how I started talking about Resilient and the Flash Cove and stuff that we do, and he's like, so you guys are in a pretty niche market then. And so it was, building it up to that point to where we pretty much we know what we're worth, and we're not going to veer away from that just to try and win a project with someone, especially with someone that we've never done business before.
yeah, well, I mean
That's a hard one.
the multifamily stuff, when installers will quit installing LVT from, I've heard prices from 45 cents to 55 cents for multifamily stuff. That's why we very rarely do it. When we do it, it's probably because I talked to the architect early on and I specified the product. If we get a multifamily build job, other than that, it's so big in our area that it's only me and one other company that can actually pull it off. And so it's just me versus them. But man, I tell you what, that multifamily, I wish installers would just quit, or start to help companies raise the price on those things because they're so cheap. I hate to see installers working their tail off for
Right.
45 cents a foot.
When
Me too, man.
we were subbing still, that we'd get calls all the time. Hey, we got 10,000 square feet of LVT. Will you guys do it for this much? Well, send us the prints so we can look at them. Oh no, we just want to know if you'll do this square footage for this much.
Yeah, that's like,
Sorry.
is it a cafeteria or is it a freaking,
Right.
What's your
a
price?
bunch
Can
of
you send me
dorm
your
rooms?
price sheet? Can you send me your price sheet? These are the products
Yeah,
that
price
we have
sheets
going
are
in.
another thing. Price sheets are another thing. Plug in Go Carerra here. I hope Go Carerra totally gets rid of. Like price sheets are too standardized, and it's
Yeah.
all. I mean, it works a little bit in residential, but in commercial, there's like it's if you if you'll install something the same that's a 8 foot by 200 foot corridor as the price of a kitchenette in a hotel, that to me is insane. Like
I agree.
there should be different. That's a different type of project and a different cost model. And if you understand your cost models and you put them together before you go to jobs, you know what you need to make. You're just not going to make it on the kitchenettes, not at the same price. So yeah, that's funny. Just could you do 10,000 feet for $1 a foot? Yeah, if it's
I,
one room and the slab's in great shape, maybe, or $2 a foot, whatever the market calls for. But well, I don't want to drag it on longer than it needs to be because we have other episodes that deal with the specifics of estimating and bidding and kind of some of this stuff. But I think it's important to understand that it's not a race to the bottom on your profit margin. You can still be competitively low and make money, but you better be bringing in some of that work that Jose was talking about, which is that negotiated work. And then from an installer standpoint, that looks like working with the same company or with the same shop that treats you well, pays you well, and you can keep working with them. But then occasionally you got to go work maybe at a little less rate elsewhere to keep your days full. The one thing that we didn't really talk about, but that is worth mentioning is the fact that you're not making anything sitting on your ass petting your dog. So there's a number that you got that you're willing to do it for, and the key is to not always be in the position to have to do it at that number.
Right, and that's kind of what John
100%.
was saying. Being able to pick and choose which projects you actually want to do, right? Especially if you're subcontracting and they're like I said, hey, will you do this for this much? And you don't always have to say yes.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's you'll make more money not doing that job.
that's one of the core pieces of why Go Career exists. You look at it, you got the drawings, you got the costs, everything, or the pricings, everything's there. Simply decline it if you don't want to do it or negotiate the job. And at the end of the day, just doing it, like you said, being a little bit more, or like John said, being a little more exclusive and a little more picky about doing jobs that best suit. And I would always encourage, like, pick the ones that best suit your skill set, because then you're going to shine almost naturally. It's right there
Yeah,
in
you
your
set
skill
yourself up
set.
for
You're knocking it
success.
out of the pet. Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Well, we have creeped up on an hour already. I will close this out with any final thoughts from you, Mr. Daniel.
Kind of what we were saying, man. Like I always I always end like the post bids or anytime I go to talk to someone, it's always regardless of what happens, information is, always free. If you ever have any questions, definitely feel free to give us a call. And we've gotten, some people that actually really do call back, and you just have to be that resource for them, and they could come back in the future, for future projects.
Yeah, relationships outlive projects. You might get another, that project's going to come and go, but that relationship, if you build it, you're going to have other opportunities. That's great.
Yes, 100%.
How about you, Jose? Final thoughts, sir?
Final thoughts, and I'm going to go back to my roots, and this is a shout out to all of the guys who operate on a labor only basis. Um, do yourselves a favor. Take the next 30 days. Take 1 month. Doesn't have to be your busiest month, and just start writing down the amount of money on stuff that you're buying and what you're using on a job. Even if it's only a week, whatever. Just take a month, break it down per week, find out what it costs you per week, start looking at your rates and see how much money you're actually giving away or leaving on the table because you don't have that calculated. Just do yourself a favor, and it's a really simple thing to do. Just do yourself a favor, get that number, look at your rates, and you'll start to see your breakdown on profitability on the labor side. That's just the best thing you can do if you're labor only right now.
Agreed. I will add to that with my final thoughts of look at it as profit per effort, not always profit. Like on the other side, I've had plenty of guys give up awesome projects where they'd have made, because we know them, we know what, they've done work for before, and the price per foot wasn't there, but the job layout and the material, just everything, all the other intangibles were so perfect that they would have made a real killing on it. So look at the job, compare your skills, and look at the profit per effort. In a 8-10 hour day, are you all bills paid? Can you make a lot more money on a job that pays a little bit less from a square foot price? That's possible. At the same time, do the same when you're looking at the job. This goes both ways. Don't get yourself your tit in a ringer by doing a bunch of little, having some pricing sheet that locks you into a price, and then you're doing a bunch of 80 square foot kitchenettes in a hotel for the same price that you did. You know what I mean? So look at it as profit per effort. And at the end of the day, kind of like what Jose was aiming at there, and I think he said it very well, but just to add to it is, at the end of the day, how much profit did you make? Like, can you look at that over the course of 30 days? And I think that'd be a great exercise, and see what you're actually profiting versus your true costs. So,
yeah.
All right, gentlemen. As always, I appreciate the time you guys spend here. It's always enjoyable.
Gotta give a shout out to Dwayne. I'm wearing my second favorite PF.
Pruitt flooring. I'm not sure the Kansas is right. The last time I seen, he was over in Colorado installing some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's everywhere.
Ain't nothing to it but to Pruitt. You should have put that on.
He's gonna steal that from you, or is that his already?
No, I've been telling him that. I don't know when I came up with that. Probably we were at a CFI event or something like that.
That's hilarious. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much, and we will chat with you a little bit later.
All right, take it easy.
See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.